Okay, so this is the 5th time that I filmed this video. If the quality sucks, I'm sorry. I am forced to do it on my phone now because my computer is like, I don't know, something's wrong with the storage on it. I have tried to make this video so many times and I've either got too nervous to post it because I've never shared a story on a platform like this. So I'm always nervous to finally post it. And if I did actually like film it and have it ready, I felt like I was either rambling too much or that I didn't tell parts of the story that needed to be told. So I'm gonna start from the beginning and I'm just gonna go through the whole thing. Hopefully without rambling, hopefully without leaving anything out. So obviously it starts with when I met my son's father. I talk with my hands. I'm so sorry. You're gonna see my hands a lot. So I met him my freshman year of high school. He was a senior. We met through social media, which is pretty much the way everybody meets in this generation. So we met through Instagram. He had messaged me one of my pictures, like sent me my own picture that I posted, and he was like, "Where have you been all my life?" Which is probably the cheesiest thing that anyone's ever said to me. Probably like the top 3 things. And at first I was like, this dude is weird. Like, why are you sending me my own picture? And like, that's the weird, like, of all things you could have said to me, that's what you choose to say to me. So I was like, I'm not even gonna respond to him. My best friend at the time, we had like went through his Instagram to see who he was, and I was like, okay, like he's kind of cute. And she was like, he's cute, like he's a senior, like he's cool. He wasn't popular, but he was well known. And so I was like caught up in the idea that I would be talking to like this well-known senior who's up there and I'm a freshman. Like it would give me some sense of like being cool, which seems stupid to me now that I look back on it, but that's where my mindset was at as a 13-year-old freshman. I first saw him at one of his football games he invited me to. So I went to his game, and afterwards I was like expecting him to want to meet me or like find me on the field or something, like say hi to me, like something that you would do when you first meet somebody, especially since he invited me to his game. So he didn't meet me after, and I was like, okay, maybe he just doesn't, like maybe it was just a joke, like he doesn't really want to talk to me. So I was like, okay, like I'm gonna leave it alone. And then he texted me that night and was like apologizing because like he had to leave with his family right away, so he didn't get to come find me, but he's like, I still want to meet you. And so the next day, it was Saturday, and I was like, okay, well, like, do you want to come over? So he came over, and like we watched scary movies, we talked, we got to know each other, we hung out. That's when it officially became a thing. We were always together after that. We officially started dating, I want to say about December of 2015. The whole time I was caught up in like he's a senior, like I'm cool, like this is like the cool thing. I was mesmerized by his age and his grade level, and that just brainwashed me into thinking that it was like the greatest thing for me. It was really good for a couple months, but he is not overprotective, but he's the very protective type, to where, I mean, he was trying to have a say in everything that I did, who I was friends with, what I posted, what I did with my time, where I was, who I was around. And I, at the time, thought of it as like, oh, like he's my boyfriend, like it's okay, like I love him, like this is fine. And it caused a lot of arguments with us, which I pushed past me because obviously I was young and I was caught up in the idea that I was in love, which puppy love, maybe, actual love, no. So we were sexually active very early on, which is uneasy for me now that I look back on it, just because he was so much older than me, and I would never want my own child in a position like that now that I look back on it. So I'm not proud of that in my life. I'm not saying it's his fault. I took part in it completely, but I blame myself for putting myself in that position. We fought a lot, and it was very off and on. Anyone who knows us knows that we were always breaking up, always getting back together. It was never like, no one knew with us what was going to happen. So finally, I broke up with him at the end of my freshman year, and I suck at being alone, just for the sole fact that I don't really have anyone that I'm close to in my family. Me and my sister weren't close back then. Me and my dad were very distant with each other, so I never really felt like I fit in. and I had like 2 friends that I would hang out with outside of school, and that was it. So I got really lonely over the summertime, and he was something that I was comfortable with, that I was familiar with, so naturally I gravitated back towards him. We were not together officially when I got pregnant. So I was back in school at the time. I was a sophomore and I was playing volleyball, and I would go over to his house like before my games or before practice, or he was graduated, so all he did was work. So he would, if he wasn't working, he would come over to my school like before I went into practice or before I started my game, which is when I got pregnant, not at school, at a house. I got pregnant September 15th. I missed that month period, obviously. And I kind of knew at that point. I mean, I know my body. It's weird because I was never pregnant before, so I don't know what it feels like to be pregnant, but I knew that something wasn't right. And obviously I knew that we weren't taking the precautions that we needed to. It was a 98% chance that it was possible. So I knew, and I kind of told him before I even took a test. I was like, I am pregnant. Like, I know I am. I was afraid, but I wasn't shocked because we had talked about wanting kids before. Obviously not when I was 14 years old, a little later on, but that didn't happen. It didn't go as planned. Do you want it? So we had talked about having kids. Obviously we didn't plan on me being 14 when I got pregnant. Okay, we love you, but hold on. Yeah. So I missed September's period. I took a test and it was negative. Hold on. I took a test and it was negative, and I knew that it was false. I was like, no, that's no way it's right. Like, I'm pregnant. Yeah. And so I missed October's period, and then I took another one, and that's the one that came back positive. And from then on, I feel like once I saw that positive, it was like real and it hit me. And from then on until I hit 3 months, I was constantly throwing up. I hadn't told my family, so I tried to play it off like I was just like sick. I was like, oh, it's just the flu. Like, I wouldn't throw up in front of them. I would make it a point to like leave the conversation before I got to that point. And okay, go. We went to Planned Parenthood in October. It was right before one of my games, and I was like, I just need to know like the weeks. I need to like figure everything out about this. So we went in, and they told me I was 10 weeks, which I later found out wasn't true because I went to an actual doctor 4 weeks later, and they told me I was 10 weeks. So I was about 5.5 or 6 when I went into Planned Parenthood. So they were running off the idea that I'm 10 weeks pregnant, and obviously termination for pregnancy has a time limit. As far as being considered humane. So they gave me everything that I need to know, and they basically told me like, you have a week to make your decision and then you need to decide. He considered it heavily. He considered it for legal reasons because obviously, like I said, he was older than me, and for him, I understand why he considered it, because it could have altered his life if things had gone worse than they did, or things had gone down a different road with us. So we called his family first because I didn't want to tell my family yet. Obviously I'm 14. He was way older. So we told his family, and they were not surprised, but they weren't happy. So from then on, our arguments really were centered around he wanted to terminate and I didn't make a decision yet. I told him I didn't make a decision, but I had decided like 2 days after I went to Planned Parenthood that I wasn't going to go through with it. I was the only person who could walk into the clinic and walk out of the clinic, and I was the only person who could understand the feeling of growing a child and then not having a child inside of me. It wasn't my thing to do. I could not bring myself to do it. I had made my decision, but I couldn't tell him because obviously he was really considering abortion, and he had reasons why he should be considering it. But I felt like my personal life and decisions outweighed it. As far as I was the one who had actually have to go through with pregnancy, he had no obligation to stay. Yes, morally he had an obligation, but there was nothing written in stone saying that he had to go through with the pregnancy with me and that he had to be there for his son, which I didn't expect him to stay and fully step up the way that he did. But he did, and I give him props for that. I really fought with telling my family. I remember I played my volleyball game that day. I told one person on my team, who eventually told everybody, which obviously I couldn't trust her, didn't know it at the time. So she told everyone, and it sparked the rumor about it. Everyone was asking me. I lied. I was like, it's just a rumor, and I kind of tried to push it away as far as I could until it hit one of my best friends. We had been really close since freshman year. We were actually more than friends before I even met his father. So when he cornered me and asked me one day, and he was like, tell me the truth, like, are you pregnant? I felt like someone like stabbed my heart. He was always really, really close to me no matter what happened. Like, I knew he would always be there for me. So that was one of the biggest things about losing friendships in pregnancy, is that I lost him. I lied to him that day that he asked me, and it stuck with me for a very long time. I lied to him because I had already lost so many people that I felt like if I had lost him too, I would have just completely lost myself. So I told him no, and I know that he didn't believe me, but I feel like for my sake, he pretended that he could, or he pretended that he did believe me. So I went on telling people that I wasn't pregnant. Obviously, the rumors went around and people stopped talking to me, and I noticed it a lot. And so finally, it was winter break, and it was New Year's night, or New Year's Day, technically. And I was like, you know what? Like, why am I hiding this? Like, it's a child. He's not gonna go away. I was gonna find out the gender that month. It was all getting very real, and I was like, it's not gonna stay hidden forever. Like, I was already getting a baby bump. I knew it was just gonna progress from there rapidly. So I posted a picture of my first ultrasound with like the most simple caption that I could think of, and I think it's still on my Instagram actually. And that's when everything shifted. I went back to school after break, and nobody wanted to talk to me. I had 2 friends, and if they weren't at school, I was just alone. I was so scared to walk into school that day that I remember I would just, I was glued to my phone. I was like, look at your phone, don't look up, don't make eye contact with anyone, and you won't notice that people are staring at you, as that's the pregnant sophomore. So I went about my days from then on in school, just strictly go to class, go to break, don't make eye contact with anyone, minimal conversation with people, keep to myself. So I lost a lot of people throughout my pregnancy, and that's what really hit me the most. I was never popular, but I made a point to know everybody and to talk to everybody and to make myself friendly. So when I went from talking to everyone at school to being ghosted by everyone at school, it really hit me as far as my mental health. And to this day, that's something that I still struggle with, is my anxiety and my depression as far as how I view myself and how other people view myself. It hit me very hard. I remember that I would stay up at night crying, and I would just be talking to my son, and I'd be like apologizing that I brought him into this world, and I would feel like I failed him. Like, I would be apologizing. I would be like, I'm sorry that I can't give you everything. Like, I'm going to try my hardest. And that's when I really started considering adoption. I only considered it for a few days. I can't say that I considered it extensively, because I looked into it and I started watching people's YouTube videos actually about their adoption stories. I started reading about people who were adopted and who didn't know their parents, and I read about all the different types of adoption. And then I just like sunk in that I, again, would be the one person to go through the labor, push this child out of me, and then just hand over my rights to this child, hand over my life with this child to someone else and say, here you go, I have no ties to them. Now they're your child. I couldn't do it. After I closed that door, I finally realized that I needed to step up and that I needed to put my choices in my life above anything else. And so I really focused on school. I stopped procrastinating. I went from being a 1.5 student to being a 4.0 honor roll student. I changed my life around completely. I was living with his father at the time, off and on. I would say like 50-50 almost. I would spend here and then at his father's house. He really stepped up, which is something that I will always thank him for. He made sure that I was clothed and that I was fed and that I had everything that I needed, because my family wasn't the one who got me pregnant, so they completely cut ties as far as financially, or almost completely cut financial ties. So he really stepped up for me. I wouldn't have been able to go through such a healthy pregnancy without him. Once it was out there to my family, I don't want to say that our arguments stopped, but they got progressively less until we hit like the end of my pregnancy, when his father did some immoral things to me, but I continued to overlook them because I had this idea in my head that I was going to have a child with this man. We were going to get married. We were going to have a perfect family. I wasn't going to give my son a broken home. That's what I felt was going to happen. Clearly didn't happen, and I'm actually glad that it didn't that way. I stayed through school until I was 8 months pregnant. I had him June 15th, and we finished school, I believe that year we finished on like May 25th. So I was there, I want to say about 3 weeks before I had him. I was still in school, which honestly took the biggest toll on me physically. I was 5'1" and petite my whole life. I had never weighed above 130. I mean, 130 to me was heavy in terms of my body. So physically, I was like drained. I made sure to keep up an exercise routine. I was always physically active because I read that it was best for my child, and my doctors obviously told me it was best. So finally school ends. We went through our baby showers. We had a couple. Got his room set up. And then June 14th, I woke up. I was planning on having just a regular checkup that day, and I woke up at 7 a.m. and I had been procrastinating putting my hospital bag together up until that day, and I had this feeling come over me. I was like, I need to get everything put together right now. So I put everything together that we possibly need, more than we possibly needed. Went to my checkup that day, and they were like, congratulations, you're gonna have your baby today or tomorrow. And I was like, no, like, I'm 38 weeks pregnant. I was 38 weeks and 6 days. I had 2 weeks predicted. 1 week away was my due date. I was told that I wouldn't even consider going into labor until probably after 40 weeks. And I was like, you know what? This is why I had that feeling. Like, my body knew I was going to have this baby today. It told me to pack my bag. Like, everything just fell into place. So first thing I did when I got out of the hospital was call my family, because they told me to go home and walk around and then come back and check in at 6. So we called my family. My grandma was going to be in the room with us. My sister wanted to be there. We called all of his family who wanted to know and wanted to be there, obviously. And then I ate like nobody's business when I was pregnant. So first thing I needed was food. We went and got food. And then his father, anyone who knows him, he is very, I don't want to say self-centered, but his image and the way other people see him is valued at the top of anything in his life. His first thought was that he needed to go get a haircut because he needed to take good pictures when his son was born, which irritates me to this day. But it's in the past now, so I can't change the past. Here, right here. So we went to the barbershop, and I'm sitting in this hard metal chair having active contractions. They were like 3 to 4 minutes apart, and he's taking forever. He was like, hold on. He was like, it won't take that long. And then we're 2.5 hours into this, and I'm like, okay, dude, like, I'm having contractions. I was starting to get pissed off. And obviously, like, he always hates when I get mad at him or when I tell him what to do. Stop. It started an argument again. And then finally we're done, and he... Yeah. Do you see yourself? So it started an argument, and finally we're done. So we're on his way to his house, and he hadn't even packed his bag. So he's taking his sweet time packing his stuff, and I'm pacing up and down the hallway having contractions, yelling at him to hurry up, and he's getting even more pissed off with me. And then I didn't even have my stuff. So we went back to my house, got my stuff. By that, we were already an hour and a half over the time that I was supposed to check in. So I had to go through the emergency room, which caused this whole chain of events of mistreatment and honestly the worst that I've ever been treated. Nothing I would have expected coming from nursing, especially a medical facility like that. What's wrong? What's wrong? So it's nothing I would have expected coming from a medical institution, especially like that, which is honestly a whole nother story in itself. So I'm not going to get into it right now. But I was in labor. I got checked in. I was in labor for about 12 hours. And then finally I was ready to push. So I had him at 7:07 in the morning. He weighed 7 pounds, 2.5 ounces. And he was 21.5 inches long. I stayed in the hospital for extra days because of the mistreatment medically. Life after that was hard for the first year. I left public school and went independent studies so I could stay home with him as much as possible. I finished 11 full courses in the time that people in public school did 4, so it boosted me ahead of everyone else in my grade, which really gave me a sense of like, I can do this, like I have the confidence in myself. After that, I went back to school, so I was in public school, I was working after school, and then my free time I was with my son. I got my license, I got my car, and that's when everything kind of shifted. Once I hit my first job, I stopped relying on my family for financial help, and from then on, since I got my first job in December of 2016, I have been fully independent. Anything that I need, anything that my son needs, beyond what his father gets him, daycare, I pay for everything on my own now, which gives me the biggest sense of independence. And it gives me the biggest sense of accomplishment. I feel like that in itself makes me more confident in the mother that I am, because I feel like I am able to provide more for my son. It really changed everything around. It opened my eyes to a lot though. Once I got my job and I felt more independent, I finally left his father when he was 3 months old for good. That was the last time we were ever together after that. And it made me realize that I didn't need another man in my life to make me feel full and complete. I had my son and that was all that I needed. He completely changed my life around. I mean, I hit honor roll. Like I said, was financially independent. I got jobs that I would have never predicted getting. I mean, I became a waitress at 16 years old. I saved up enough to be stable in my life financially, which I would have never dreamed of before I had him. I probably would have still been working at fast food joints. I would not have the best grades. I would not be an honor roll student right now. I would not be the person I am without him, and that is 100% wholeheartedly guaranteed. As far as where we're at to this day, I am a senior. I have 4 months left of my schooling. Me and his father are amicable. We will never be anything beyond co-parents, but he still checks in on me personally. I still check in on him sometimes as far as like our time with our son and financial responsibilities for our son. We have our own system set. I never wanted my son to grow up in a relationship where his parents were always back and forth through court, dealing like with legalities and things like that. So I'm honestly glad that me and his father were able to work out this agreement outside of the courts. He has his son for his set days. I have him for set days. We work out as far as like our work schedules and our school or my schooling schedule. So he will always be a big part of my life. Obviously, I have 17 more years with his son, almost 16 when he's 2. So we'll always have to have that co-parenting relationship, no matter if he's 18 or older. But I think we've reached a spot in our lives where we are able to co-parent peacefully. Yes, we still fight. I'm not saying it's all peaches and rainbows. We fight often, but it's never anything like it used to be. We're not best friends. We'll never be best friends, but we have came to kind of an equilibrium in our life where everything is just constant. I've moved on. I have somebody else in my life. He's been in my life for 6 months now. I'm happy. I mean, Jay's so good with him. They love each other like I would have never imagined. And I can honestly say that I've reached a point in my life where I am finally starting to see the positive that I can do, and I'm starting to finally realize that I am capable of doing more than I think that I am. And my son has shown me that. He has opened up confidence in me. He has opened up independence in me. He has opened up the most hardworking that I've ever been in my life. And it's all due to him, which is the biggest change that I could have ever asked for in my life. That's all up to this day. Obviously, there's a lot more that I can go into depth about. My labor and delivery is probably the biggest story. It was unbelievably scary and nerve-wracking and just aggravating. But that's a whole nother 20-minute rant that I could go on. So I know that people have been asking me to make this video since he was like 6 months old, and I finally got the courage to post it. So I hope that questions were answered in it. I tried to cover everything that I could think of covering. Obviously, I'm not gonna hit every topic. I mean, it's been a year and a half since I had my son. There's a lot that's happened. But I tried to cover the major things and the major events leading up to where I am. Obviously, my past has a big effect on where I was when I got pregnant and then where I am now. And there's a lot of other relationships in my life that have affected how I am as a mother and how I am as a person. But, I mean, like I said, I could go on about everything leading up to this for hours. So I hope that you guys got questions answered. I hope I didn't leave anything out. Obviously, if there's anything that anyone wants to know past this, I'm willing to answer anything. I'm trying to be a more open person. That's my biggest goal for myself in 2019, is to have more confidence in myself and show my son that you don't have to close yourself off to the world to be successful and to feel good about yourself. Thank you guys for watching. If you've actually watched the whole thing, I appreciate you. And yeah, bye.